Hi, I am Chitra.
I am Madhvi.
I'm Jyoti.
I'm Suchitra.
Together, we are your hosts
On the Aedge podcast.
We bring you stories and experiences
From our experiments around learning, marketing, and design.
These are stories of people, technology,
And people interacting through technology.
of what we see, create,
And recommend.
Hi, and welcome to the Aedge podcast. That's AEDGE. I am Chitra Gurjar, co founder and chief product officer at Adeptic Creative Labs, and one of the many hosts that you will come across in the podcast brought to you by Adeptic Creative Labs. We're a space for learning and more. So let me start with our origin story. This predates Adeptic and began in July of 2020. Many years ago, a dreamer who'd worked at large tech companies in the USA decided to move back home to India. She's a passionate writer and creator with an enormous appetite for experiments. She soon founded a company, Clearly Blue Digital, offering services around knowledge, content, marketing, and design. Being an instructional designer by training and a chef of sorts, she has conjured stories and solutions and cooked content that make Clearly Blue what it is today. Wait a minute. I said this podcast is brought to you by Adeptic Creative Labs. It is. And so, our origin story continues. Padmaja Narsipur, the maverick entrepreneur and founder of Clearly Blue Digital, and I were fated to cross paths when we collaborated on building e-learning courses for the social sector. For me, that was the first of many experiments. I have a background in engineering and software product development. I am a coach, yoga enthusiast, basketball player and fan, a podcaster, and I love to share my learning so it helps working professionals. I started after nearly 20 plus years of corporate life and a few more years of consulting and coaching. Until then, I had dabbled in various areas of design that included user research, usability assessments, products and services design, alongside my main work in systems engineering. After building pieces of that e-learning course, I was hooked on all things design. From my e-learning experience, understanding adult learners, knowing and navigating the social sector, writing scripts and storyboards that created a great learning experience, I knew I wanted to do more. We hit upon Adeptic as a space for discovering and sharing learning for working professionals. We started cohort-based courses around what we knew best. It is but natural that when there's a team of creators and strategists, we could pull in the best to create, deliver, and train organizations and people with our expertise in marketing, learning, and design. So, is this the story? There's some more. The Aedge podcast shares experiments and experiences around learning, design, and marketing, brought to light by our energetic collective of people. We are known by many names. We create and deliver solutions and want to share our learning with the world out there. We learn so much while doing what we do, and that's what we'll showcase in this podcast. And now, we come to why we call this podcast Aedge. We believe people want to be adept at what they do, and we want them to have the edge that makes them so. As we nurture this podcast, we'll have many hosts and guests sharing their stories. So let me start by sharing a recent experience of what I'd like to call the grand mix of learning, marketing, and design. As I'd said earlier, after nearly 2+ decades of working in software and technology, I wanted to do different things. I also knew this meant learning new skills and tools, working with people from different backgrounds, very different from mine, and being able to cater to people outside only the realm of technology. So when a request came up from a client to design a digital content strategy, I was baffled, or rather felt like I was on the edge of what I knew not. So content to me until this request came in was all about writing blogs and perhaps creating some videos that kept your marketing engine moving smoothly in terms of creating some awareness about your company, what you do, who you are, and so on. I was quite the novice when it came to the ecosystem around content and extremely social media shy. I was also skeptical about the whole client requirement given the nature of the client's business, a deep tech company. From my past experience, I know that engineers are quite social media averse and aren't too taken in with showing off their work, technology, and capabilities out there. So they prefer that their work speak for itself. Our client wanted to change the way their company, technology, and people were perceived by the outside world. In particular, they wanted to attract the attention of engineering students so that they could build mindshare about what a great place our client company is and that they could have a fantastic career if they chose to join them. Okay, so where do we begin? We started by looking at their existing content, of course, and then figure out how they were currently being perceived. And where should we look for the content? The obvious place to start was, with their website. And then I noticed my own biases from my past in engineering were playing into the problem analysis quite strongly. I mean, why would engineers want to talk about what they do on social media? Isn't that where celebrities usually hang out? I noticed my own reluctance building up, rather like a cold shoulder to the problem. I mean, digital content strategy for a tech company, huh? And that too a leading one in their domain. Why? They don't suffer sales or profit. They lead with the bleeding edge in their space. Why do they even need to be known besides? A solid track record for over 3 decades. Are we chasing the wrong lead? I also discovered that social media shy fit our client persona very well. So, a colleague of mine who'd partnered with me on this project was equally clueless about how to do this. We took on the challenge nevertheless, starting with the fundamentals of design to design a content strategy, after all, by putting the user at the center of the stage. Something the world would know as discovering your user persona. So, this was lesson number 1, and phew, glad something from my past helped here. A few started conversations with the sales and marketing team of our client, and we realized that they too were initially more skeptical than I was about a digital content strategy. Yay, and thank goodness for that. So we chose then to focus on their business challenges, leading with questions like, why do you want to change from what you're doing today? What does that mean to your business? You are leaders and your closest challengers are far behind. So why do you want to change? And then they slowly opened up. My colleague and I realized that we just had to keep the conversation going. And after about 2 or 3 such sessions, the problem became clear and took on a very interesting shape. An aha moment at this point, for me, was using the power of why to stay in a conversation and being genuinely curious about the client problem. Slowly, as one peels an onion, each interaction with our client teams enabled us to unravel what lay underneath. We learned that if they didn't get the mindshare of college students, they'd lose out on an opportunity to address huge market needs in their technology space coming up over the next 3 to 5 years. They also knew that there was a community of seasoned engineers and architects that could influence industry opinion and competitors. And finally, that the geography of India was key to their future growth, which also meant that localized and contextualized content was key to their success. Once we helped them understand that they had the power to influence students, seasoned engineers, and shift the perception of their company by showcasing what they create and their differentiators, and more importantly, showcasing their own thought leadership, we knew we were heading in the right direction. So my lesson number 3 was to help a client delayer a problem so that it's examined from multiple angles. It involves eliciting key stakeholder views. People feel like they are heard to enable our shared understanding of the problem. No content strategy yet, but just using first principles that I had learned from my previous work experience being applied. And if you noticed, some key elements of marketing have already come into play around content. Once we were on the same page, it was fairly easy to help them to see ways of using various mediums and why they needed to redesign their content to create better awareness with their target audience, use multiple approaches to change interaction and engagement, showcase local ideas, talent, and thought leadership, understand what the competition was doing differently, particularly in India, leverage social media, and shift mindsets from being media shy to media friendly, from quiet confidence to bold sharing, and showing why working at this company is great by sharing people stories from employees. And that's when I realized that content was just one way to do all this. Around content, there had to be an ecosystem created to support the content from creating mindshare in the outside world Two, and engaging with the customers to the point where they become your company advocates. Hey, if that sounds familiar, isn't that like a customer journey? And that's my lesson number 4. Using the good old customer journey map that became the perfect two-dimensional view for our client, one that could show you what you were doing for your target persona today and where you needed to go right from awareness through advocacy. And we'll talk more about this in a future episode. I'm sure about it. I was happy that I could bring my past techniques and apply them in a new context, learn about the power of content, and shed my own social media shyness. Only then could I tell the client with confidence that, hey, the young crowd of today hangs out at digital water coolers. And I also began dipping my toes into learning marketing strategies to design this content strategy. Other than that, what I learned was quite a bit of reinforcement learning for me from my past experience in terms of having an open mind and being aware of my biases rather goes from the past, taking every experience as an experiment and enjoying the process rather than the outcome. And another episode definitely to discuss this matter at length is in order. Becoming fully involved in a problem. Only then can you have a conversation around the problem, also known as problem discovery. With this, I hope you enjoy listening to our podcast. This was episode 0 of the Aedge podcast, Learning Together. We look forward to bringing you so much more. Please subscribe to the Aedge podcast on your favorite podcast channel. We are on Google, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends. If you have stories to share and want to be featured on our podcast, write to us at podcasts@adepticlabs.com.